everyone, welcome back to this channel. In today's video, we are going to see about library management system project. In this video, we'll explore the design, implementation and features of a library management system developed using Java and Spring Boot. The system is designed to manage books, members and borrowing activities efficiently. Before diving into the code, let's discuss the requirements for a library management system. The system should allow librarians to manage books, members, and borrowing activities. It should support adding, updating, and removing books from the library coding. Each book will have details such as title, author, ISBN, publication year, and availability status. Members should be able to borrow books and return books. Each member will have details like name, member ID, contact information, borrowing history, etc. The system will enforce borrowing rules such as maximum number of books that can be borrowed at a time and a low duration. It must handle concurrent access to the library coding and member records. The system should be extensible to accommodate future enhancements and new features. Now let's talk about the technologies used. We developed this project using Java 23 and Spring Boot, a powerful framework for building Java applications. For database management, we utilized JPA, Java Persistent API with a Hibernate, allowing us to interact with the database seamlessly. We allows incorporated Maven as our build tool to manage project dependencies effectively. Now let's talk about folder structure. In this structure, controller contains a REST controller handling HTTP request. DAO contains data access object interacting with the database. And model holds the entity classes that represent our database tables. Service contains business logic of our application. And utils holds utility classes such as constant. In terms of design patterns and principles, we employed the MVC model view controller design pattern, which is separate concerns by dividing our application into three interconnected components: model, data, the view, UI, and the controller logic. We allowed to solid principle to ensure our code is maintainable and scalable. For instance, we followed the single responsibility principle by ensuring each class has one reason to change. Okay, now let's move on to code. We will explain each class step by step, highlighting its purpose and annotations used. Okay, this is our main application class annotated with at Spring Boot application. This annotation indicates that this is a Spring Boot application and enables auto configuration, component scanning, and Spring Boot's configuration properties. This Spring Boot annotation marks the main class of Spring Boot application. It is a convenience annotation that combines three annotations. At configuration indicates that this class can be used by the Spring IOC container as source of bean definitions. At enable auto configuration enables Spring Boot auto configuration features which attempts to automatically configure our application based on the dependence you have added. At component scan tells Spring to scan the package of this class for components, configuration and services. Now move on to the model package into book class. Here's entity. This annotation specifies that the class is an entity and is mapped to a database table. ID indicates the primary key of the entity and generated value. This annotation is used to indicate the primary key will be automatically generated by the database. typically using an auto increment column. Method. Construct or initialize a book instant with attributes. You can create a book with the specified title, author, ISBN, publication year, and availability status. Getter setter. These methods provide access to the private fields of the class. For example, get title retrieves the title of the book. Next, I hope you understand this class. Next, we have to move on borrow class. Same, the entity class entity annotation maps the borrow class to the database table. ID and generate value similar to the book class. These annotations are used for primary key. And construct or initialize a borrow instant with the member ID, book ID, and borrow date. Getter and setter allow access to the fields, enabling the application to retrieve and modify borrowing records. Next, on to member class. Same entity maps to the class to the database table. ID specifies member ID as a primary key, and element collection. In this we use element collection. Indicates that borrowing history is a collection of basic type or embedded type, mapping them to a separate table. Constructor initialize a member with the provided details and borrowing history. Getter and setter allow the application to retrieve and update member information. Next, now move on to book interface. At repository indicates that the class is a repository and is responsible for encapsulating the logic required to access data source. This also enables Spring's expectation translation. JPA repository. This JPA repository. This interface provides CRUD operations and more for the book entity without needed for boilerplate code. Next, move on to borrow interface. Similar to book interface, this interface allows CRUD operation on borrow entities. Same, move on to member interface, provide data access method for member entity. Next, we move on to service. Book service. At service indicates that the class is a service and contains business logic. And auto wired injects the book DAO dependency automatically, allowing you to access the data layer. Method add a book saves a new book. Add book saves the new book to the database using the repository. Next, move to borrow service. At service indicate same at service indicate the class is a service that contains business logic. Auto wired injects the borrow DAO dependency automatically, similar to the book service but forced on managing borrowing activities. Next, move on member service. Again, this class is similar to the other but is concerned with the member management. Add member, um, get all members, delete members, get member by ID. These functions are done by this member service. Okay. Next, move on to controller package. Book controller. At-rest controller. This at-rest controller combines at controller and response body, making it easier to create RESTful web service. And request mapping defines the base URL for all endpoints in this controller. And post mapping. Post mapping maps HTTP request to the add book method, allowing clients to add new book. Get mapping allow clients to get all the books by get a book by ID, and get mapping allow the users to get all books, and delete mapping allow the users to delete the book. Next, move on to borrow controller. This class manages borrowing operations similar to book controller. Delete borrowing history, post borrowing history, get the borrowing history. These functions are done by this borrow controller. And move on to member controller. Manage a member operation following the same structure as other controllers. Uh, get mapping, get all members. Delete the members by ID and get the member by ID. Post the members. Now move on to util constants. This class contains constant value used throughout the application to define business rules such as the maximum number of book a member can borrow and the loan duration. In conclusion, if we run the if I check in the Postman, the I used the HTTP post method and I got this response book added successfully. Uh, our library management system is a robust application designed to manage library resources efficiently. With the shore of Spring Boot and JPA, we have built a scalable system that adheres to best practice and design principles. This project not only meets the requirement but it's also extensible for future enhancement. Thank you for watching this video. If you found this video helpful, please like, share and subscribe to my channel for more tech content.